The observatory's generator coughed twice before settling into its low hum. The metal walkway creaked under boots as I locked the outer gate. Frost traced patterns along the dish's cables, but the monitors glowed steady blue. Talia's message scrolled on my cracked phone screen. Lights moving like veins through the sky. Anyone else seeing this? I tapped the reply field but hesitated, fingers hovering. A fresh alert burst through the speakers, sharp, pulsing, then drowned in static. Emergency alert system. Unidentified aerial phenomena. Atmospheric interference detected. Stay indoors. Avoid exposure. I grabbed the satellite dish's auxiliary receiver and spun the dial. The static hissed, a low growl under the message loop. Unidentified? I whispered to the console, fingers tightening on the knob. You've seen them. Outside, the sky folded itself into dark streaks. Colored filaments drifted between cloud gaps like torn silk threads stretched across the horizon. I stepped out onto the catwalk, scanning with the handheld scope. A cluster pulsed red, then blue, then white, spirals tightening into impossible angles before vanishing. Holy, the word cracked against my teeth. The speaker sparked again. The message repeated, but half the words slurred into alien syllables between bursts of static. Record it, I barked at myself. My thumb jabbed the console's record button without breaking rhythm. The observatory's main monitor flickered. For a fraction of a second, the emergency broadcast overlay warped, letters stretched, inverted, and rearranged. The timecode spun backward. I tapped the keypad again. The signal cleared for half a second before returning to static. On the temporary display, faces flickered, familiar ones, grinning, mouths too wide. I leaned forward until the glare reflected in the glass. Maeve! I shouted into the hallway. No answer. Only the low mechanical whir of cooling fans. I raced down the corridor, boots thumping, and banged on the director's door. Inside, the room sat empty. The papers on her desk fluttered under the airflow. A window latch hung loose. I grabbed the desk intercom. The red light blinked steady but dead. I slammed the receiver down. Back outside, the lights crawled lower across the sky, slower, deliberate. The secondary monitor pulsed green, then froze. A waveform stretched beyond scale, vibrating until the speakers crackled with harsh interference. I checked the camera feeds across the compound. The night vision showed animals circling the fence. Deer stood frozen, eyes reflecting blue-white. The crows clustered on the antenna, feathers rigid, beaks parted as if speaking. I grabbed the maintenance radio. Control, this is Quinn. We're picking up interference on channel 7. I'm going outside to check. No response. I slung the handheld scope across my shoulder and jogged toward the equipment shed. The snow pressed shallow footprints behind me. The air smelled metallic near the dish. It clung to the edges of cables and panels like thin frost. Inside the shed, the backup console screen blinked red. The data log scrolled unreadably, columns shifting in impossible sequences before resetting. A warning banner flashed for half a second. Do not respond. Do not reply. I slammed my palm against the keyboard. Who's sending that? The screen froze on lines of code I didn't recognize. Symbols repeated in loops that scrolled too fast to catch. I reached for the analog receiver. The frequency cracked again. Words emerged. Listen, transform, signal, vessel. I froze, hand halfway between knobs. The words repeated, each time clearer. A cascade of symbols spilled down the screen like falling sparks. I grabbed the directional antenna's mic. Identify yourself. I barked into the hollow microphone. Static swallowed my voice. A faint chorus rose, layering over the hiss, tones bending in frequencies outside human hearing. A movement at the door made me spin around. The frame warped briefly before returning to shape. I slammed the door shut and locked it, throwing the deadbolt with both hands. My fingers lingered on the metal. The warning from the screen blinked once, then faded. I cut the power to the external array. The hum died instantly, and the sky outside fell into oppressive silence. The lights vanished as if wiped away by an unseen hand. For a moment, only snow whispered across the walkway. I checked the monitor again. The alert overlay returned, crisp, official, normal. Emergency alert system. Unidentified aerial phenomena. Avoid contact with debris from meteor shower. Stay indoors. I exhaled and jammed the record button once more. A chime on the secondary display drew my attention. A green pixel pulsed in the lower corner, beside the corrupted feed window. It blinked twice, then steadied. I approached. The camera showed the forest line moving. Branches writhed. A stag stepped into the clearing with patches of skin torn back, muscle glistening, veins exposed and lit from within. It lifted its head toward the camera and stared. The eyes, they shimmered, turning black at the center while the outer rim flared white. I yanked the monitor cable loose, but the feed didn't die. The stag's image remained, even with power cut. The display blinked one last time before going black. I grabbed the emergency tablet. The network log flooded with connection attempts from unregistered sources, IP addresses cycling through the entire grid in seconds. A final message appeared on screen. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. I turned toward the door. Footsteps scraped the floor. The handle rattled once, then froze. The snow outside swirled upward in spirals, lifting into the night like seeds caught in windless air. I slid the deadbolt further, hand steady. The static returned through the speakers, not loud, but enough to wrap the room in unseen pressure. I yanked the shelf to block the door, then crouched beside the console. The green pixel blinked again. The animals at the fence didn't move. I crouched behind the console and pushed the feed to full brightness. The deer stood stiff, eyes reflecting unnatural light. The crows opened their beaks in unison, but no sound came. A new alert cut through the silence. Emergency alert system. Biological contamination detected. Avoid contact with affected animals. Report sightings immediately. The speaker's tone glitched halfway through. The final line stretched, repeating 3 times in warped syllables. I grabbed the handheld radio. This is Quinn. Repeat your broadcast. I hit transmit again. No answer. I slammed the console's red power button. It sparked but remained lit. The screen showed a new feed, the wildlife camera angled toward the clearing. The stag stood in the open, ribs torn open as if gnawed from the inside. Muscle hung loose, pulsing. A soft glow seeped from the raw edges. It lifted its head toward the camera. The pupils stretched to cover the iris. Black spread outward, swallowing white. The screen shimmered once, twice, then steadied. The animal's eyes locked on me. I yanked the monitor cable. The feed stayed alive. Damn it! I shouted, yanking again. The cable popped out, but the image remained. The stag's stare didn't break. I lunged for the analog receiver, flipping switches at random. Static roared. Words surfaced. Vessel join transform. I slammed the receiver back onto the shelf. The motion sensor outside flared red. A shadow blurred past the doorway. I ran to it, but only snow spiraled beyond the threshold. The static deepened into an eerie drone. I hit the audio filter button, but the screen showed jagged spikes crawling across. The emergency tablet chimed. I pulled it up. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. A second rule appeared below, flickering once before disappearing. I spun around. The handle rattled. A breath of air slid through the crack. I locked the deadbolt, sliding it tighter, then braced the shelf against the door. A sharp crack echoed from the roof. I bolted outside. The snowfield had a line of tracks leading toward the dish. Hoofprints stretched and gnarled, each step deeper than the last. I dropped to my knees beside one. The edge of the print glowed blue-white. Thin tendrils of light radiated outward, coiling like veins. Stay away, I barked, scanning for movement. The stag burst through the treeline. It ran without grace, limbs jerking at wrong angles. Its ribs were half exposed. Muscle twitched like wire bundles. Spines jutted from its back, each tipped with pale light. It leapt the fence in one motion, hooves landing in a spray of snow. The snow hissed and smoked where its feet hit. It wheeled toward me, head lowered. I grabbed the maintenance radio. Control. Animal breach. Send backup, now. Static answered. The stag slammed into the fence again, the metal writhing as if alive. I stumbled back, sliding on snow. The fence bowed inward, wires twisting like tendrils. The stag's muzzle pressed through the gap, jaws stretching. A low gurgling roar spilled from its throat, half growl, half voice. Join transform. The stag lunged. I swung the handheld scope like a bat. It cracked against its skull with a hollow thud. The stag recoiled but didn't stop. I sprinted toward the emergency hatch, slamming it open with my shoulder. The sliding metal door froze halfway, then shuttered open fully. I dove inside. Behind me, the fence exploded outward. The stag's form blurred. Snow sprayed in sheets. The entire perimeter wriggled as if crawling toward the hatch. I yanked the internal latch and slammed it shut. The outer wall vibrated once, then settled. Inside the hatch, emergency supplies spilled from shelves. I ripped open the first aid kit, pulling gauze, but it slipped from my hands. The stag's roar deepened, then shifted into whispers. Words overlapped in alien cadence. I grabbed the emergency flashlight, sweeping its beam toward the observation port. The clearing outside pulsed blue-white. The stag's eyes burned like twin stars. Its tongue flicked from its maw, bifurcated and slick with light. It bared teeth that elongated, sharpened like shards. The corners of its lips stretched unnaturally wide. A second animal crawled from the woods. Smaller, twisted, its limbs mismatched, fur clumped with strange tendrils. Both animals charged together. I hit the emergency lock sequence on the console. Red lights flashed. Lockdown initiated. Steel plates slid across the hatch mouth with grinding force. I slammed the control until the mechanism engaged fully. The roar outside turned into a chorus. The hatch shuddered again. Snow seeped through cracks and thick veins, creeping toward me like wet roots. I grabbed the medical kit's fire extinguisher, ripping the safety pin free. A metallic odor filled the air. The roar grew louder, synchronized, a wave crashing against steel. The hatch burst open with a shriek. The stag's head plunged inside first. Light exploded against the interior walls. The creature's jaw snapped toward me. I swung the fire extinguisher full force. It hit the skull with a crushing crack. The stag's head jerked sideways. Its eye, half shredded, glowed brighter. The smaller animal's limbs clawed through the gap, sinews stretching, nails clicking against metal. I shoved the extinguisher at it, but it clung tighter, fingers impossibly long wrapping through. The extinguisher's foam erupted, coating its claws. They dissolved mid-grip, sizzling. The stag's roar hit again. The entire hatch rattled. A new broadcast burst through the speaker, cutting across static. Emergency alert system. Unconfirmed reports of affected animals inside facility. Do not approach. Maintain distance of 50 feet. Wait for hazmat response. The words looped twice, then corrupted. The stag bared its teeth one final time. The outer hatch exploded inward with a hail of twisted metal. The emergency hatch shuddered but held. I forced the extinguisher back onto its bracket. Foam dripped onto the floor. The monitor snapped to life again. Emergency alert system. Affected area, Blackwood Observatory. Containment protocols initiated. Await hazmat response. The final line glitched. For a brief moment, it spelled something else. Wait vessel. I hit the override key. The text vanished. The feed returned to normal, warning officials prepping response teams. The radio sparked. Quinn! Quinn! A garbled voice repeated, breaking in and out with static. I pounded the transmit button. Quinn here. Hatch secure. Request verification. Do you copy? The line cut out. The emergency tablet lit up again. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. A second warning scrolled briefly before disappearing. I hit the tablet's menu and froze it mid-scroll. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. The screen distorted, then blinked twice before going black. I yanked the emergency flashlight from its mount and shone it through the observation port. Snow caked the outer rim, streaked by long claw marks. The stag's hoofprints circled the hatch, their glow dimming but persistent. Lines of ice-thin frost crawled toward the door seemed like veins across glass. The speakers hissed, then burbled. A new alert overrode the previous one. Unconfirmed reports of contamination inside facility. Lockdown in effect. Do not exit safe zone. The voice repeated the final line in a slower cadence, unnatural, as if read by multiple speakers layered together. I scanned the control panel's logs. Multiple connection attempts from outside sources flooded the network. Unregistered devices pinged across every port. A waveform peaked on the auxiliary monitor. It spiked once, then stabilized. Beneath the surface, lines twisted into shapes, triangles merging into circles, spirals curling into polygons. I zoomed in. The shapes rearranged faster than human perception. The screen flashed again. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. I slammed the cabinet closed and locked it. My thumb hovered over the verification protocol button. The lights dimmed, surged, then returned. The broadcast panel snapped to a government feed, an official in a hazmat suit, face obscured by a reflective visor. We are assessing biological hazards. Residents are advised to remain calm and comply with containment orders, the figure said. The words crackled with interference. The visor's reflection rippled unnaturally. I switched channels. Only static. I crossed the hatch again and crouched beside the floor vent. Air sucked inward through thin cracks around the door frame. Snow powder crawled inside like mist. I stuffed rags into the vent grill, sealing it. The hiss quieted. The external temperature display plummeted by 10 degrees within seconds. I pulled open the maintenance drawer, flipping through the emergency manual. Sections had been overwritten by garbled text. The words blurred into loops, symbols blending with alien glyphs. I hit the emergency scanner button. The display spiked violently. Biological signature detected, unknown structure. Location, south perimeter. Containment risk, high. The scanner locked on coordinates outside the fence. The external cameras froze, then rebooted. Only static filled the screen. I opened the diagnostics tab. The network had been flooded by multiple fake nodes attempting authentication across the observatory's entire system. I slammed the emergency tablet back onto the console. The power indicator stuttered. I unplugged it. For a moment, silence returned. Then the speakers hissed again, deep and slow. A voice spoke through the static. Join. It repeated once. Join. The words stretched as if pulled by unseen fingers. I grabbed the radio again. Identify yourself. Static answered. The hatch shuddered. I slammed the internal deadbolt again. The lights flickered once. A blue-white line traced the floor's edge, pulsing like veins of frost. I crossed to the equipment shelves. A folder lay half open. Inside were logs stamped with yesterday's date. The top file read, Cellular Activity, Sample 7B. Status, Enhanced Immune Response. Unstable Replication. The sheet beneath it bore strange annotations and unknown characters, interrupted by words I recognized. Adaptive. Vessel Absorption. Neural Rewiring. I flipped the page. It was blank. The speakers rasped one final time. Emergency Alert System. Containment breach confirmed. Isolate immediately. The message looped. I slammed the radio onto its charger. I crossed to the observation port and pressed my palm against the glass. Snowflakes clung to the rim, frozen mid-drift. Beyond the snow field, the forest's edge moved. A second stag stumbled forward. Its limbs buckled at wrong angles. Its skin sloughed away in patches. Its ribs protruded like jagged scaffolding. Blue veins pulsed beneath exposed tissue. It lifted its head. Its eyes flared white. It moved toward the hatch. The external temperature dropped again. Frost crawled along the rim until it sealed the crack. The speakers screamed once, then cut out. The monitors went black. I hit the emergency generator override. The lights failed. Only the emergency backup glowed, red and dim. The snow hissed along the door seam. The stag's hoof scrapes rasped against the metal. I slammed the shelf against the door and locked it with every wrench in the toolkit. The temperature readout dropped once more. A voice whispered through static. Transform. The panel blinked twice before going dark. The monitors rebooted without warning. Static crawled across the screens like living threads. The emergency tablet pulsed red. Emergency alert system. Multiple affected reports in urban sector. Do not approach exposed individuals. Isolation protocol active. The message looped, breaking into garbled syllables at the edges. I grabbed the radio. Quinn to control. Report the urban breach. Confirm hazmat deployment. Static drowned the request. I toggled the scanner. The pulse graph surged violently before flattening into unreadable noise. A second alert flashed. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. The rule's overlay bled into the government channel below it. A suited figure appeared briefly, lips moving, but the audio cut out. I hit the broadcast override key. The screen froze, then flashed broken lines spiraling inward. The outside camera feed switched. City streets stretched like veins under fog. Vehicles sat abandoned, doors ajar, headlights blinking in sequence like signal eyes. The infrared overlay showed heat signatures scattered in unnatural patterns, some crouched, others twitching mid-step. I hit record. The feed blurred and sharpened again. A woman staggered into view beneath a streetlight. Her movements snapped in short, jerking bursts. She pressed both hands to her ears as if listening. Her eyes turned white from the inside outward. A second frame cut in. A man crawled across pavement, limbs twisted. Muscles rippled unnaturally beneath torn clothing. He paused, teeth bared toward the camera. The static hissed. The emergency tablet buzzed again. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. A message window popped beneath the rules. Confirm identity. Enter security code. I punched the code from memory. The window cleared, then replaced by corrupted characters. The scanner beeped. A map overlay appeared, showing spreading red zones. Biological contamination expanding. Tracking infestation vector. Source, meteor debris zone. I hit the environmental controls. Outside, the wind shifted. The infrared camera showed dozens of heat signatures converging in clusters near buildings. The fog thickened, curling like smoke though the sky remained clear. The speakers crackled. Join, join, join. The words looped in unison with static bursts. I slammed the mute button. The hiss stopped, but the visuals pulsed. I zoomed on a group. 3 figures advanced down an alley. Their steps landed in perfect rhythm. Their eyes glowed white. A 4th appeared, staggering then sprinting faster than human speed. The city map updated. Affected population increased 47%. The panel beeped again. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. I locked the observation panel. The cityscape flickered. Buildings wavered, edges softening as if melting into light. I flipped through archived footage. Every clip stuttered, then rewrote itself with corrupted overlays. Faces twisted, smiles too wide, hands reaching impossibly long. The emergency tablet blinked once more. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. The final line stretched into nonsense characters before stabilizing. I hit the map view. A new report scrolled in bursts. Shelters compromised. Emergency response teams unreachable. Communication grid disrupted. I hit replay. The official feed cut out entirely. A blank screen blinked. The scanner flashed. Signature detected, unknown bioform. Moving inward from outer ring. The coordinates pulsed on the edge of the city. I grabbed the handheld scope and aimed at a nearby intersection. 3 figures broke from the fog at once. They lunged toward the camera. Their limbs stretched unnaturally long, fingers splayed like claws. One face shifted mid-motion, skin peeling away from muscle, revealing pale tissue threaded with glowing veins. The figures froze, eyes burning brighter than the streetlights. The camera feed distorted. The static bloomed outward like ripples. I yanked the power cable. The screen died. The emergency tablet buzzed furiously. Emergency alert system. Confirm location. Identify access point. Verify identity. The commands looped faster each time, drowning the speaker. I slammed the power switch. The entire console flickered, then cut out. For a moment, the room sat in silence. Then the backup speakers screamed. A new feed burst through. Unverified contact detected. Biohazard intrusion imminent. The words fractured into jagged lines. The temperature display plummeted by 15 degrees. The frost that had crept along the hatch returned in sheets, racing toward the vents. The external cameras reactivated one at a time. Each view showed figures emerging from the fog. Some moved on all fours, others twisted at angles that defied anatomy. The heat overlays revealed unnatural patterns, veins glowing like circuitry beneath skin. The final warning pulsed. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower. Unknown biological hazard. The rule scrolled once, then vanished. The speakers whispered again. Transform. The static curled through the walls. The screens began flashing coordinates. Evacuate now. Isolate immediately. Lockdown failing. I slammed the control panel's override button. The hatch shuddered violently. I slammed the internal deadbolt. The frost spread like veins across the floor. The monitors flared white. The feed cut to pure static. A shadow slid beneath the door. It stretched longer than possible. The emergency tablet flickered once, then blacked out. The generator sputtered once, then died. The monitors blinked to black. Only the emergency backup light glowed red, steady. The speakers hissed, then emitted a low-frequency hum that climbed, warped, and bent into unintelligible tones. I grabbed the emergency tablet and flipped through logs. Every entry cycled endlessly, repeating new symbols over old ones until they dissolved. The temperature readout dropped again. Frost spread from vents toward the center of the room like slow veins. The hatch handle rattled. I slid a steel brace under it and cranked it tight. A new alert burst through the speaker. Emergency alert system. Unauthorized transmission detected. Aerial interference extending. Isolation protocol active. The words looped with static. I hit the override panel and forced it into diagnostic mode. The feedback feed scrambled into lines of geometric symbols twisting into spirals. The scanner flared. Biological signature, unknown structure. Location, perimeter grid 7. Signature expanding. The data points pulsed like circuitry. I crossed to the observation port. Snow swirled against the glass in spirals too regular to be natural. Beyond the ridge, a figure sat unmoving. I zoomed the scope. It was Rowan. His face was obscured by frost and shadow. He sat cross-legged beneath a weathered tree, unmoving, eyes closed. I hit the intercom. "Rowan, open the hatch." "Status check." Static answered. The speakers hissed, then a voice broke through, faint, slow, layered. "Census complete." The words repeated twice before cutting out. The emergency tablet flickered. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. The rules scrolled quickly before dissolving into corrupted lines. I grabbed the maintenance radio. "Rowan, do you copy? This is Quinn." "Repeat, this is Quinn." The hiss swallowed my words. The monitors sparked. A map overlay lit up. A network of lines crawled across the continent, connecting to small blinking nodes. Each node pulsed once, then darkened. A new annotation appeared. Stellar census initiated. I hit zoom. The lines shifted, converging at the facility's location. The map stretched, warping into impossible angles before settling. The scanner flashed again. Neural activity surge detected. Unauthorized link established. I pulled the hatch brace loose and hit the manual override. The door slid open in jerks. Outside, the snow lay in spirals along the walkway like etched symbols. The sky pulsed. Above the tree line, faint ribbons of light arced across the stars, forming patterns too complex for human design. I gripped the hatch frame. The speakers hissed again. Emergency alert system. Do not exit safe zone. Unauthorized contact compromising containment. Remain inside until further instructions. The message looped, then warped, replacing words with strange glyphs. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped onto the snow. The frost traced symbols beneath my boots. The temperature gauge continued to drop. I jogged toward Rowan's cabin. The cabin's door stood open. The interior was dark, silent. I kicked it in. Inside, symbols were carved into every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, etched with frost and ash. A brass cage stood in the center, wires trailing to an array of makeshift devices, spools, antennas, cracked monitors. A chair sat empty. I grabbed the nearest panel and hit power. The screen flared to life. The signal jumped, then cleared. Rowan's face appeared, pale and lined, eyes bloodshot but steady. His mouth moved. Map beyond coordinates, spiral threshold. Static consumed the rest. I hit record. The feed distorted again. A diagram appeared, circles nested inside circles, connected by lines forming impossible lattices. At each node, an eye pulsed white. The caption scrolled. Stellar census, partial reading. Source, cosmic survey. Aim, human neural mapping. Conduit, biological receptors. The diagram shifted, new lines extending into space. The coordinates blinked and dissolved. The scanner beeped wildly. Bioform presence increasing. Surveillance grid compromised. The speakers whispered. Join vessel share. I slammed the intercom. Identify yourself. I barked. Static roared back. The monitors brightened, then distorted. For an instant, Rowan's face stretched wide, his eyes multiplying across the screen before snapping back into focus. I yanked the power switch off. The room plunged into red emergency light. The frost traced a line from the door to the base of the cage. The temperature plummeted. The speakers hissed once more. Emergency alert system. Isolate immediately. If exposed, do not contact others. The words repeated until they dissolved into noise. I slammed the manual override to lock the cabin. Outside, the snow spiraled upward in patterns matching the symbols. The sky shimmered. Above, the stars rearranged themselves into shapes spiraling inward toward a central point. I hit the hatch control. The door slid closed with grinding force. The last flickering image of Rowan's diagram dissolved into white noise. The emergency hatch slammed shut behind me with a grinding clang that vibrated through the walls. The monitors flared back to life, lines of static pulsing across them like living wires. The emergency tablet lit up again. Emergency alert system. Spiral threshold detected. Stellar mapping active. Containment breach imminent. The message looped, splitting into glyphs between repetitions. I hit the panel's override. The text scrambled, replaced by coordinates twisting inward. A second window popped up. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. Below it, corrupted characters scrolled faster than they could be read. I grabbed the scanner and hit power. The screen exploded with noise, then resolved into concentric rings overlaying the facility's blueprint. Each ring pulsed once, then shuddered. A label appeared. Astral convergence point. The rings began spiraling toward a center point near the cage. I swung toward it. The cage's brass bars quivered. Frost traced lines from base to top like veins climbing the metal. The speakers hissed, then whispered. Join a shared expand. The words repeated in chorus until broken by static. I flipped the scanner again. Bioform grid expanding. Neural link established. Source unverified. The coordinates shifted toward the hatch. I hit the hatch override, but the control panel flashed red. Lock failure. Access denied. I slammed the emergency override button until sparks shot from the circuit. The control froze. The emergency tablet pulsed once. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. The rules scrolled, replacing warnings with corrupted loops. A new alert burst through the speakers. Emergency alert system. Personal identification required. Failure to verify will result in network loss. The words repeated faster each cycle until they dissolved into gibberish. I grabbed the maintenance radio. Control. This is Quinn. Respond. The static swallowed my call. I hit transmit again. Nothing. The hatch handle shuddered violently. I dragged a steel tool across the crack, wedging it hard against the frame. The frosted lines along the floor surged, racing toward the hatch seemed like veins of light. The emergency tablet flared again. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. The rules pulsed once, then scrambled into symbols that crawled across the screen. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed at the cage. The brass shimmered. The frost shifted from crystalline to thread-like patterns spiraling inward. A low hum filled the room. The red emergency light deepened, casting long shadows that rippled across walls like moving veins. The speakers screamed once, then cut to a soft whisper. Transform. The sound looped under static. I flipped the scanner back to the map view. The spirals twisted faster. The central point at the cage's base pulsed white-hot, then dimmed. A new annotation appeared. Conduit established. Mapping complete. The room's air thickened. The frost veins along the floor thickened, reaching toward the cage like roots. I yanked the hatch brace tighter. The handle rattled harder. The temperature dropped again. I pulled the manual override lever. It sparked but failed. I slammed it again. System override blocked. I threw it aside and grabbed the radio. Hazmat teams inbound. A distorted voice hissed once before cutting out. Static filled the line. The monitors twisted. Rowan's face appeared, stretched wide, eyes multiplying, before flickering into grids of symbols. The feed stuttered. A second window opened. Stellar census complete. Human neural data transmitted. Replication in progress. The text scrolled until it dissolved into lines. The cage quivered harder. The frost veins snapped like brittle wires before reconnecting, thicker. The speakers rose again. Join a shared expand. The words layered into a chorus. I hit the mute button. The hum continued, quieter but persistent. I lunged at the control panel, slamming switches until sparks burst. The screen went black. The only light came from the flickering emergency backup. The frost veins advanced. The brass cage's bars pulsed in rhythm with the hum. A soft crack sounded, then another. The cage shuddered. I grabbed a wrench and wedged it between two bars. The metal bent. The frost raced along the deformation, glowing brighter. The speakers hissed once more. Emergency alert system. Isolate immediately. If exposed, do not contact others. Failure will result in network loss. The message looped until the last word stretched into meaningless glyphs. I hit record on the tablet. The spirals accelerated. The concentric rings collapsed toward the cage's base. The emergency light snapped between red and white. The frost veins surged again, faster than before. The brass bars twisted inward. A final whisper rolled through the static. Transform. The cage's door warped. The frost burst from the floor seemed like veins of light surging toward the metal. The lock exploded. The door began to fold inward. The monitors exploded in white noise. The hatch shuddered again. The brace snapped with a crack that ricocheted through the metal frame. I slammed it back into place, driving it deep against the seam. The emergency monitors exploded into static, then cleared. Emergency alert system. Containment breach confirmed. Spiral threshold opening. Isolate immediately. The words repeated, glitching with bursts of alien glyphs. I hit the override sequence. The panel flickered, replaced by spirals twisting inward toward the cage's base. A second warning scrolled. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. The rules cascaded, overlapping until half the text dissolved into symbols. I slammed the control panel's emergency lock. Lock engaged flashed briefly, then red warnings consumed the screen. The speakers hissed. A deep hum crawled through the walls. I grabbed the flashlight and swept it toward the cage. The brass warped at the edges. Frost spiraled across its surface, wrapping in tighter loops like veins twisting inward. The hum deepened, bending into layered tones that vibrated the glass. I hit the intercom. Control. Confirm your location. This is Quinn. Respond. The static roared back. A second voice emerged, multiple voices layered, speaking in overlapping tongues. Share transform beyond threshold. The words dissolved into a howl. I slammed the intercom shut. The monitors scrambled again. Rowan's face appeared briefly, stretched into multiple reflections like shattered glass before blanking out. The scanner flashed violently. Bioform grid expanding. Neural link active. Source unverified. The annotations pulsed toward the cage. I ran to the observation port. Outside, snow spiraled upward in concentric patterns like spirals etched by unseen hands. The trees bent inward toward the facility, as if pulled by gravity that shouldn't exist. The stars above aligned into spirals threading the sky's edge. I slammed the hatch closed again. The lock engaged with sparks jumping from the circuit. The frost veins stretched from floor seam to hatch edges, quivering. The temperature dropped again. The emergency tablet lit up. Emergency alert system. Network access lost. System override blocked. Isolate until further notice. The warning looped faster each cycle until fragmented into noise. I ripped open the maintenance drawer and grabbed the analog receiver. The tuning dial spun on its own. The static screamed, then coalesced into sharp tones that bent around the room's edges. A figure moved beyond the glass. I aimed the flashlight. The frost parted. A human shape stood frozen. Its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. The skin hung loose like melting wax. Its eyes burned white from within. It stared without blinking. I slammed the intercom. Stay back. Do not approach. The static burst, then a chorus of voices whispered. Join a shared transform. The figure lifted one hand toward the glass. The frost veins surged. The lock flickered red, then vanished. The hatch handle spun on its own. I grabbed it and held it tight. The emergency monitors pulsed white-hot. The spirals on the scanner expanded until the rings overlapped, consuming the entire layout. Astral convergence imminent flashed across the screen before warping into unknown symbols. The speakers screamed. The frost veins shattered like glass splinters, then reformed thicker and faster. The brass cage buckled. Its bars rippled inward. I yanked the wrench from its bracket and wedged it deep between two bars. The metal bent with grinding pressure. A glow radiated outward from the warped edges. The emergency light snapped between red and white. The hum escalated until it vibrated the walls. The cage's warped bars twisted tighter, spiraling toward a center point. The frost veins traced the spiral, pulsing with light. The speakers hissed again. Emergency alert system. Containment failure detected. Network breach complete. Isolate or perish. The final line stuttered, dissolving into static. I slammed the tablet's emergency lock button. The screen froze for a moment before cascading into symbols. The intercom sparked. A second voice, distorted and layered, whispered, "Complete the map, share the vessel." The words dissolved. The frost veins snapped toward the cage's center. The bars buckled fully inward. A soft crack rippled across the brass like something soft being crushed. The spirals outside aligned, converging toward the horizon's edge. The stars pulsed brighter. The snow lifted in spirals like seeds drawn by a windless force. The scanner's rings collapsed inward in a burst of static. The room's temperature plummeted. The hum bent into a roar. The emergency light snapped to full white. The hatch lock exploded outward with sparks. The frost veins surged toward the cage's base, faster than ever before. The brass bars twisted like threads unraveling. The lock casing popped open. The cage door warped. The spirals outside flared. The stars aligned into a perfect, infinite spiral drawing inward toward the facility. The monitors flashed white. The speakers screamed once more. Spiral threshold open. The lock exploded. Sparks flew. The hatch frame buckled outward. I threw my shoulder against it, slamming it shut. The control panel sparked and died. The emergency light cut to white, then red, pulsing. The monitors erupted into static before switching to corrupted feeds. Emergency alert system. Threshold breach in progress. All unverified contacts are compromised. Isolate or face network loss. The message looped. I grabbed the emergency tablet and forced the override sequence. The screen warped, spirals twisting into shapes that formed eyes, mouths, and symbols. A new window popped up. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower, unknown biological hazard. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. The rules flashed and scrambled, blending into unreadable lines. I hit the scanner. The rings collapsed inward faster than ever before. A blinking node appeared at the cage's base. Conduit established pulsed white-hot. The speakers screamed once, then softened into layered whispers. Share transform beyond. The words repeated, curling into static bursts. I yanked the flashlight from its bracket and swung it at the cage. The brass rippled like soft metal, folding inward. Frost veins burst from the floor, racing toward the bars like liquid light. The emergency tablet screamed. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. Below it, corrupted symbols crawled over the text like vines. I slammed the panel's emergency lock. Lock failure flashed. The handle spun. The bars warped tighter. I grabbed a wrench and jammed it between two twisted bars. The metal groaned. The frost veins pulsed brighter. The speakers hissed again. Emergency alert system. Network breach complete. Human data transmission active. Containment compromised. The lines blurred, then flickered out. The monitors went blank. Only the backup light remained, glowing steady red. I yanked the hatch brace and hammered it back into place. The handle shuddered violently, spinning with unnatural speed. Outside, snow spirals lifted in slow motion, rising without wind. The stars above aligned, spiraling inward toward the horizon's center. I hit the intercom. Control! Identify yourself. The static burst. A distorted voice layered with whispers. Complete join expand. The words twisted together before cutting out. The frost veins shattered, reforming faster. The brass cage buckled, its bars twisting into spirals around one another. The emergency tablet pulsed. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. A second window popped up. Bioform grid expanding. Neural link active. Source unknown. The annotations blinked toward the cage's warped base. I slammed the emergency override button. The panel sparked but froze. System access denied blinked repeatedly before dissolving. I grabbed the analog receiver and twisted the dial. Static screamed. A burst of layered tones flooded the room. The walls vibrated. The speakers hissed. Transform, share, join. The words repeated. The frost veins raced along the floor like veins of light crawling toward the cage. The hatch handle spun faster. I wrapped a steel pipe around it and gripped it tight. The lock casing sparked. The brass bars warped inward another inch. The frost veins pulsed brighter. The emergency monitors flared white-hot. Astral convergence scrolled across the screen before twisting into unreadable glyphs. I flipped the panel to manual controls. All switches flipped to red. I jammed the emergency stop lever down. The circuit sparked but failed. System locked flashed across the panel. The hatch shuttered again. The frost veins burst toward the cage in branching patterns, racing up the walls. The speakers screamed once more. Emergency alert system. Isolate or perish. Network loss imminent. Contact with unknown structure prohibited. The warnings looped faster until merging into static. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it through the freezing air. The frost parted in spirals. The brass cage's bars twisted tighter, groaning under pressure. The red emergency light snapped on and off with increasing speed. I slammed the tablet's emergency lock. The screen shook violently. The spiral rings on the scanner collapsed completely inward in a flash. The blinking node at the cage's base flared white. The speakers hissed into silence. The emergency monitors exploded into bright static. The hatch handle spun once more before snapping free. The brace ripped from its slot. The frost veins surged like liquid filaments toward the cage's warped bars. The brass split open. A black void pulsed within. The spirals outside aligned fully. The stars bent inward like threads weaving into a single point. The emergency light snapped to full white. The monitors cut out. The hatch exploded open. The hatch burst open. The frost veins raced inward like streams of liquid light. The brass cage bent deeper, spirals folding over themselves until the door cracked open. I slammed it with both hands, forcing it closed. The metal gave way in sharp bursts. The emergency light snapped to full white, then flickered red with increasing speed. The monitors exploded into static. Emergency alert system. Containment lost. Astral convergence complete. Isolate or perish. The message looped until broken by bursts of unintelligible glyphs. I grabbed the control panel and hammered the override button. The circuit sparked violently before dying. System failure flashed briefly before the screen dissolved into lines. The speakers hissed, then whispered. Complete join expand. The words crawled across the room. I lunged for the emergency tablet and forced it on. The spirals on the screen twisted into shapes resembling human faces before melting into static. A second alert popped up. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower. Unknown biological hazard. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. Below them, corrupted symbols scrolled uncontrollably, replacing the final letters. I slammed the tablet against the wall. The surface shattered, screens flickering into unreadable bursts. The frost veins reached the cage's warped edges. The metal twisted tighter, bending inward like threads being woven together. I grabbed a steel bar and wedged it into the gap. The cage shuddered violently. The lock exploded outward with sparks flying. The frost veins shot toward the lock casing like liquid veins racing for a wound. The emergency monitors flared white-hot, then went dark. I hit the analog receiver. Static screamed across the room. The speakers screamed once, then layered voices murmured in a chorus. Share transform beyond. The words bent into distorted echoes. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it at the cage. The warped brass pulsed with light from within. The frost veins surged up the floor like roots overtaking stone. The hatch shuddered. The handle spun on its own. I wrapped a pipe around it and gripped hard. The handle snapped off. The brace tore from its slot. The frost veins shot toward the opening like tendrils reaching for a target. The emergency tablet flashed one last time. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. The text looped, then dissolved into scrambled lines of code. The monitors stayed dead. The speakers whispered again. Transform. The words repeated, curling into static. The brass bars twisted tighter. The cage's warped door cracked fully open. A black void pulsed within like breathing space. The frost veins leapt from the floor seamed toward the void. The emergency light pulsed red-white, faster each cycle. The spirals on the scanner twisted into geometric patterns beyond recognition. A new annotation appeared. Neural link complete. Data transmission active. Bioform grid unstable. The labels blinked once before distorting into meaningless shapes. The speakers screamed. The frost veins surged in waves, lashing the walls before retracting toward the cage. The hatch frame shuddered again. I grabbed the emergency lock and slammed it repeatedly until sparks flew. The casing sparked but refused to engage. Lock override failed flashed once before fading. The spirals above twisted tighter. The stars aligned into impossible patterns, spiraling inward toward a single point. The emergency tablet screen burst into white noise. The speakers hissed louder. The walls vibrated. The frost veins pulsed like veins of liquid light. The cage's bars bent deeper. The void inside stretched wider. The emergency light snapped on full red. The monitors exploded into fragments. The spirals outside aligned fully. The stars bent inward like threads weaving into a single point. The emergency alert looped once more. Spiral threshold consumes. The last words stretched into scrambled glyphs before fading into static. I slammed the tablet against the floor. The screen fractured into jagged shards. The frost veins raced toward the cage's warped edges again, pulsing with relentless speed. The hatch shuddered violently. The metal frame buckled. The handle spun one last time before snapping free. The brace tore from its slot. The frost veins surged like liquid veins toward the cage. The brass bars twisted tighter, folding inward until nothing but black void remained. The emergency light pulsed red-white at impossible speeds. The monitors exploded into blinding static. The spirals above stretched into infinity. The stars bent inward, converging on a single, all-consuming point. The cage split. The brass warped inward until it tore open along hidden seams. The frost veins lashed outward like threads of light racing across the floor. The emergency light snapped full white, then shattered into red bursts. The monitors exploded into static. Emergency alert system. Threshold consumed. Network loss imminent. Isolate or perish. The warning repeated until bursts of scrambled glyphs overtook the screen. I grabbed the control panel and slammed the override sequence. The circuit sparked but refused to respond. Access denied flashed repeatedly before disappearing into blankness. The speakers hissed violently, then warped into layered whispers. Share transform join. The words slid into static bursts. I lunged toward the cage and braced the warped door with both hands. The metal groaned before splitting further. The frost veins snapped toward the gap like threads of light drawn by gravity. I slammed the emergency lock again. Lock failure blinked once before flickering out. The hatch handle spun wildly. I grabbed it, yanking with all my strength. The handle tore loose. The brace ripped free from its bracket. The frost veins surged toward the opening in thick strands. The emergency tablet flashed violently. Rule 1. Avoid all contact with debris from meteor shower. Unknown biological hazard. Rule 3. Do not approach individuals showing signs of infection. Maintain 50-foot distance. Rule 5. Do not trust anyone claiming to be from emergency services without proper verification protocols. The text looped and fractured into unreadable symbols before the screen dimmed. I grabbed the scanner. The spirals on its screen twisted faster, pulsing toward the cage's core. A blinking node appeared at the split seam. Bioform grid collapsing. Neural link complete. Data transmission active. The annotations glitched, then stretched before fading. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it at the cavity. Inside, darkness pulsed. The brass's edges split wider. The frost veins raced toward the core like veins in tissue. The hatch shuddered violently. The emergency light snapped between white and red. The speakers screamed once before dissolving into static. I hit the analog receiver. The dial spun uncontrollably before locking on distorted tones. The static burst into screams. Multiple voices overlapped, echoing. Complete join beyond. The words spiraled until drowned by noise. I slammed the intercom. Control. Respond. The line filled with static bursts and fragments of scrambled speech. The speakers hissed again. Expand, share, transform. The words repeated, layering like waves. I grabbed the tablet's emergency override and hammered the button repeatedly. The casing sparked. System failure flashed before the panel cut to black. The frost veins leapt toward the opening, pulsing faster. The brass's warped edges bent deeper. The cavity widened into a black spiral stretching inward. The emergency monitors burst into blinding flashes before cutting out. Only the backup light remained, flickering red. The scanner spirals twisted faster until they blurred. Astral convergence complete scrolled across the screen before twisting into unreadable patterns. The spirals above aligned, drawing stars into impossible loops spinning inward. The hatch frame shuddered again. I grabbed the handle's remains and slammed it against the wall. The frame cracked. The frost veins surged again, racing toward the center. The cage's brass edges split open. The void pulsed like breathing darkness. The emergency light flared once more. The monitors exploded into shards. The spirals outside bent inward like threads weaving a vortex. The warning flashed. Spiral threshold consumed. The last word stretched into meaningless symbols before vanishing into static. The frost veins burst from the floor, seemed like veins overtaking skin. The cage's warped edges folded inward in a spiral until nothing remained but the void. The hatch frame buckled. The emergency light snapped to full white. The monitors flashed violently before going dark. The spirals above aligned fully into a single point that pulsed with unnatural light. The emergency tablet's screen shattered into fragments of noise. The speakers hissed one final time before going silent. The frost veins raced toward the void like veins seeking flesh. The air thickened. The stars above pulsed brighter, then disappeared behind spirals twisting toward infinity. The emergency warning looped once more. Containment lost. The message repeated until consumed by static. I grabbed the scanner, forcing it on. The screen flashed white-hot spirals before cutting out completely. The cage's remnants twisted inward. The hatch frame splintered. The emergency light snapped once before cutting out. Darkness swallowed the room. The darkness swallowed the room. The emergency lights failed completely. Only the scanner's glow remained, flickering between white-hot spirals and black voids. The cage's brass fragments twisted inward like strands of melted metal racing toward the core. The frost veins surged again. Crawling along the floor seemed like veins overtaking flesh. The monitors exploded into bursts of static. Emergency alert system. Final threshold breach. Astral convergence complete. No safe distance remains. The message looped violently before shattering into fragments. I grabbed the scanner and forced it on. The spirals twisted faster until the shapes dissolved into unreadable glyphs pulsing red. Rule 2. Report any wildlife exhibiting unusual behavior or enhanced capabilities. Rule 4. If you suspect exposure, isolate immediately and await hazmat team. The text flickered, then blurred before vanishing into white noise. The speakers hissed into static bursts. Join, transform, expand. The words folded into one another like echoes bouncing off unseen walls. I slammed the emergency override button. The panel sparked but failed to respond. Access denied flashed once before disappearing into darkness. The hatch frame shuddered violently. The handle spun once, then exploded outward with sparks. The brace tore free. The walls quivered with unnatural force. The scanner spirals twisted tighter, pulsing like veins of light racing toward the room's core. I grabbed the tablet and forced it on. The screen flashed spirals that spiraled inward until they stretched into impossible loops. The emergency warning flashed again. Containment lost. Network destruction in progress. Isolate or perish. The warning looped faster until turning into static bursts. The frost veins surged toward the opening in thick streams. The cage's warped edges folded inward. The void pulsed brighter. The scanner spirals stretched until they blurred into a vortex. The monitors exploded into shards of noise. I grabbed the control panel's emergency lock and slammed it repeatedly. The casing sparked but refused to engage. Lock override failed blinked once before fading into darkness. The speakers screamed once more before twisting into fragmented whispers. Complete share beyond. The words stretched and broke apart before vanishing. The emergency tablet's screen flashed spirals until distorting into meaningless glyphs. The frost veins leapt toward the opening again, pulsing like veins overtaking skin. The brass shards twisted tighter. The void inside stretched wider. The hatch buckled, the frame warping inward. The emergency light snapped once, then failed completely. The stars above aligned into spirals spinning toward a single point. The scanner's spirals pulsed faster until dissolving into nothingness. The hatch's edges shattered like brittle glass. The frost veins surged one last time, racing toward the void with impossible speed. The monitors exploded into blinding bursts before cutting out entirely. The warning flashed again, brighter. Spiral threshold consumed. The last words stretched into meaningless symbols before fading into static. The frost veins overtook the room like veins racing through veins. The cage's shards folded inward until nothing remained but the void. The emergency panel exploded outward with sparks. The scanner's glow warped into black. The speakers hissed violently before going silent. The stars above spiraled inward, vanishing into the point where all light died. The emergency warning looped once more. All contact lost. The message repeated until static drowned it. The hatch frame collapsed inward with a grinding snap. The frost veins pulsed faster, racing toward the void like veins overtaking stone. The brass twisted deeper into darkness. The scanner's spirals collapsed into black holes. The emergency tablet's screen shattered into shards before cutting out. The speakers screamed once, then dissolved into silence. The spirals above aligned fully into a vortex spinning toward infinity. The hatch frame splintered. The frost veins surged in waves, overtaking walls and sealing like veins racing toward the core. The emergency light snapped off. The monitors exploded into shards of noise before vanishing completely. The scanner's spirals twisted faster until dissolving into a black whirlpool. The warning flashed once more. Threshold completely consumed. The last word stretched into gibberish before static erased it. The room fell into absolute silence. Darkness swallowed everything. Darkness held everything. The emergency lights stayed dead. The scanner's last glow warped into spirals, then vanished. The cage's brass shards twisted inward until they collapsed into a point. The frost veins surged one final time. Racing across the floor seemed like veins overtaking stone. The hatch frame splintered, shards flying into the void. The monitors exploded into white noise before cutting out. The emergency warning flashed once more. All contact lost. The message repeated until static erased it. I grabbed the scanner and forced it on. The screen flashed spirals twisting inward until they stretched into a black hole. Neural grid terminated scrolled once before dissolving into scrambled symbols. The speakers hissed violently before going silent. The frost veins pulsed faster. They raced toward the void in thick strands, overtaking walls and sealing like veins overtaking skin. The stars above aligned one last time. They twisted into spirals spinning toward infinity. The emergency tablet's screen shattered. Containment null blinked once before cutting out. The brass fragments folded deeper into darkness. The scanner's spirals stretched tighter until they blurred into a single point. The hatch frame buckled. The emergency lock exploded outward. The brace tore free. The walls quivered. The frost veins leapt like veins racing through veins toward the room's core. The emergency light snapped once before failing completely. Only darkness remained. The monitors went dead. The scanner pulsed faintly, then warped into black. The hatch frame splintered inward with a grinding snap. The void pulsed brighter than ever. The stars above twisted tighter into a vortex spinning toward nowhere. The emergency warning looped once more. Threshold erased. The final word stretched into unreadable symbols before static consumed it. The frost veins surged outward one last time. They raced along every seam, every crack, overtaking surfaces like veins overtaking tissue. The brass fragments folded inward into a spiraling knot of lightless metal. The scanner's spirals dissolved. The emergency tablet's shattered screen blinked once. Data grid lost. The casing exploded outward with sparks. The speakers screamed before dying. The hatch frame buckled again. The frost veins lashed outward. They clawed at every surface like veins overtaking stone. The emergency light snapped once, then went dead. The monitors flared into blinding noise before vanishing. The spirals above aligned fully into a vortex, drawing everything inward. The scanner's last pulse warped into nothingness. The emergency warning flashed one last time. Void complete. The final word stretched into meaningless glyphs before fading into silence. The room disappeared. The walls dissolved. The floor seam vanished beneath racing frost veins. The ceiling twisted inward into the vortex. The brass fragments folded tighter until swallowed by darkness. The scanner's glow warped into black. The speakers hissed once before falling silent. The stars above spiraled inward until erased. The hatch frame splintered into shards before disappearing. The emergency lock burst outward and vanished. The brace tore free without trace. The walls quivered before dissolving. The frost veins pulsed once before racing toward the void like veins overtaking skin. The emergency light snapped once before cutting out forever. The monitors exploded into white noise before vanishing. The spirals twisted tighter until consumed by nothing. The emergency tablet flashed one final warning. Existence terminated. The last word stretched into symbols before static drowned it. Darkness remained. Nothing.